Okay, good morning all. Okay, today we're going to discuss about procedures that we need to take in order to write a scientific paper that consists of titles, introduction, body of presentation, and conclusion. I also want you to look up for the video that I already prepared for you in the EduNext, which tells you about things that you need to do, okay, besides the thing that I write in the lecture notes. Okay, so the thing that I present here in the lecture note is basically some kind of a brief explanation on the things that probably the experts on writing those paper have, okay, because here in the lecture notes, I kind of make some kind of analogy between writing a paper or creating your presentation slide with cooking, okay, because this is the most because this is the easiest analogy, okay, that we can have based on the thing that we do in our daily basis. So writing a paper is basically is something that is kind of similar with cooking a dish for our lunch, for our dinner, for our leisure time, etc., and so on. So even the same for presentation, okay, because the appearance of our paper and our presentations needs to be intrigue someone else's curiosity or someone else's needs for information, so that the way that we present, the way that we write our paper needs to be done in a compelling way. Okay, the same like when we cook a dish or cook some kind of a food, especially for those who are serving for other people, the appearance, okay, the appearance of that dish should be appealing for people that we want to cook for. Okay, so that's why in writing paper, for example, even though we knew that the procedures and the description on that procedure is especially for us who are working in the scientific realm or in the scientific field, sometimes the descriptions becomes too formal, becomes too strict, becomes too how to say, rigid, okay, but at some point in our paper we need to give the audience reasons why reading our paper become important for them, why the paper that we present will give answers for them, or why by joining in our presentation people will get more information or more insight about the thing that they already knew before, for example. And so in order for us to write a good paper or write a good presentation slide, we need to have good ingredients and also good utensils or equipments, okay, such as well, a good for example, a good template, that's one thing, and then You may also want to use a portable laptop instead of PC if you are those kind of people who works from one place to another, because there are people who didn't like to work on the same spot or in the same place as time goes by. I mean, there are people who are not comfortable when they are working on the same cubicle or in the same desk uh, for more than 2 hours, for example. And so probably by using the correct equipment such as laptop will provide you facilities that you can write, or you can think, or you can design your presentation slide at anywhere that you are comfortable with. Okay, so it's just like in cooking, selecting the correct pan or selecting the correct bowl, selecting the correct spatula, fork, chopstick, etc. and so on will give you the best presentation on the final appearance of your dish, because it needs to be appealing for those who uh, you cook for example, for example. And then in terms of writing a paper and creating a presentation slide, it means that not only you need to have a good equipment in terms of the gadget or the laptops, but you need to also have the correct software or the correct well, it's basically the same as tools. For example, for those who are beginner writer, okay, for those who are beginner writer, probably using Microsoft Words or any other word processor software, such as OpenOffice, etc., and so on, probably will be more comfortable instead of using LaTeX, for example, because in using LaTeX, you need to know the language, the programming language for operating LaTeX. But for those who already knew that LaTeX have several advantages, especially in terms of the final appearance of a paper, because it's more formal and it's more formal, and then the format itself is matched to the typical scientific paper that Elsevier, Springer, etc., and so on has. So after you are able to operate word processing software, probably you will have the chance to learn about LaTeX and knew how to operate it, and then how to write the syntax on LaTeX, and then how to manage it, how to create a good visual on the graphs, on the layout, etc., and so on. And so so that's one example how you choose the correct tools for your writing. Other tools that probably beneficial for you is to have a good image processor. Okay, image processor here can be a bitmap image processor such as Microsoft Paint or Adobe Photoshop, or you can also learn how to use a vector image editor. For example, CorelDRAW or Adobe Illustrator and Inkscape, etc., and so on, because you will knew, okay, from one paper to another, you will have the experience that producing a good quality graph is not going to, you're not going to be able to do that unless you knew how to use a vector image editor. Okay, well, the beginning or the beginner step or the basic step is that just like when we are talking about the Microsoft Words and LaTeX, is that for beginners in image editing, it is better for you to use bitmap image editing because it's easy. However, the resolution of a bitmap image, such as JPEG and PNG or bitmap itself, tends to be broken if you decrease or if you increase the size of the picture, especially for pictures that is produced from other softwares, okay, such as MATLAB, COMSOL, or any other software that produces pictures. When you copy paste the original picture into Microsoft Word or into LaTeX, if you're not careful with the management of the resolution of the image, then it will break your image basically. Okay, so in order for you to maintain the resolution, it is better for you to consider how to produce, instead of a bitmap or a JPEG image, it's better for you to produce a vector image that you can edit later on using Illustrator or CorelDRAW, so that the resolution will be maintained even though you copy and paste the figure from one software to another. Okay, and for submitting a paper, a scientific paper in a high not high, in a good quality publisher, not good quality publisher, but there is a term for that, in Q1 or Q2 publishing, okay, such as in Elsevier and Springer, and then American Journal of Physics, and then in, for example, in Nature, in Science, and then in Physical Review, or in many publisher, okay, which has the highest grade in their publishing history. You need to send them the best draft that you have in order in terms of its writings, and also in terms of the quality of the paper. The quality of the figures and graphs and visual and other visuals. Okay, so I think the best tool for your paper writing and also for your presentation designing is essential for you in order to get that first impression of the audience or the reader of your paper or presentation. Okay, so next. Okay, so this is basically still the selecting the best ingredient, and then how you treat the ingredient well. So for example, you need to know how to use the facility, for example, in Microsoft Word, how to create a good layout, how to create a section from one section to another. For example, when you are writing for your final project report, you need to know how to separate between one chapter to another. And then in terms of a paper, you need to know how to use the I will show you later on how you use the template that is given for you from the publishing companies or how you manage your own templates based on the guidelines from the publisher, for example. And so the treatment of the ingredients also needs to be done in order for you to get good quality paper writing later on. This is also includes how you use autocorrect. If you are using if you are writing in English, sometimes you need to turn on the autocorrect option so that whenever you write a wrong letter, okay, the computer will change it into a correct one. But sometimes you also need to be careful with the autocorrect option. Sometimes the database, the word database that word processor have doesn't contain several scientific terms that we usually use in papers or in scientific journals or in scientific publications, because it becomes too specific and it is not common in the daily basis use of the English language. So sometimes several words cannot be recognized as English. Okay, so you need to be careful with it when you are turning on the autocorrect, so that the scientific terms that you applied in your paper is not going to be recognized as something wrong, but is already correct. It is already written in the proper way. Okay, so you need to be careful when you are turning on the autocorrect, but most of the time autocorrect will help you in order to automatically fix the mistake when you are typing words in English in the wrong way. Okay, and then also when you are going to display equations, okay, this is also part of the things that you need to look upon, whether you're going to use the embedded equations, or you need to use third-party software. So for example, in Microsoft Words or in Open Office or in the common word processing software, but this is not the thing if you are using LaTeX, because the original because the format or the package of equation that LaTeX has is already included in the LaTeX package, and so you don't need to think about any other options beside the equation provided in LaTeX itself, and and the output when you are printing the paper or when you are displaying the final layout of the paper, the equation itself will be shown in a classical way, in a conservative way, so that the format of the visual itself is already good. Usually that is for LaTeX. In word processing software, on the other hand, such as in Microsoft Word and also in Open Office, the quality of the equation itself, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not good. Okay, so how do we know whether our equation format is good or not? Well, you can compare it with the paper that you cite. For example, if you have one paper that is going to be the most cited paper on your literature review, for example, look on their paper and see how they write their equations, how the format is, and then what type of fonts that they use, etc., and so on. If the word processing software that you have have that ability to produce the same type of equation, then you're good. But if not, okay, sometimes the problem with the Microsoft equation, which is embedded in Word, in Microsoft Word, the arrangement of the equation is not conservative. Okay, it is not conservative. And so it is actually not suitable for a certain publication. Well, there are publications that accept manuscript that is written entirely in Microsoft Word, but sometimes there are also publications that you need to use other type of equation editor in order to produce good quality layout of your equation. For example, if you knew a software called MathType, okay, MathType, it is a third-party software that can produce equation in a conservative layout, for example. So using the writing of equation in MathType could be another alternative for you to write a paper, okay, for a certain publication, especially for those who requires you to use MathType, for example. Okay. Next one is, okay, how to mix the ingredient. Is that this is the same thing as when you are outlining, okay, the story that you want to tell in your paper. So even though our community in science have some kind of a rule of thumb rule in writing scientific papers, such as introduction, basic theory, methods, results, analysis, and conclusion, but the way that you present each paragraph in each section is free, depend on the way that you write your paper. So, for example, one could use the current problem that people face as reason in order to develop story, to develop reasons why this study is important. Or you may also use another approach, such as there are continuity of research for a certain topic from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 90s until present, that needs to be done in order to solve this question that rose in the 1950s, for example. So that's another approach for creating the story. Or you can also explain that there are some problems that is happening from past studies, okay, and this problem is not solved for some times, and now you are going to try to solve this problem that arose from the past publication of someone. Okay, so the way that you mix, the way that you arrange the composition for your introduction part, it will create some kind of a background story that readers will understand why you are conducting this research, why you are doing this study, etc., and so on. And also the way that you arrange the basic theory, for example, it needs to be relates to the research itself. You don't add many things to your paper, because sometimes they have some kind of a limitation on the number of pages that you need to include, that you need to write. For example, in physical review and also in geophysical review letter, the maximum number of pages you to write is no longer than 10 pages. Okay, because, and then the format itself is in letter to A4 paper, which letters is written in Times New Roman point 10, if I'm not mistaken. And so those limitations will make you to think about the content of your theory on your introduction, so that you don't add too many things into your paper. Basically, you need to talk about the result that you get from your measurement, and you need to put more description on the analysis of those data and what are the implications of the data that you gather from your study. Okay, and obviously the experience of one writers will determine the quality. If you are now a fourth-year student, you are in the beginning stage of your paper writing or of your final project report or your internship report, etc., and so on. Make the thing that you already done in the past as experience, as a stepping stone for you to improve yourself in terms of writing quality and also in terms of formatting quality, because creating good layout, good visual, and the writing itself is a different story. Okay, those are things that are basically different, but if you conduct them each well, it will create a unity as a good quality paper. So the experience, the level of experience that you have in terms of writing the exposition, writing the paragraph itself, in managing the layout of your paper itself, which includes your experience with templates of certain softwares, and then how your experience in terms of editing figures, editing tables, etc., and so on. If you have these qualities, as time progresses, the quality of paper usually becomes increasing as time's moving on. Okay, and so we can begin our work or our project in writing a paper by writing or thinking about a strong titles that orient readers to your area of work. Okay, so you need to, because the title itself is the face of your paper or your presentation. It is the front page that people will read. If you look at a newspaper or if you look at the news portal in the internet nowadays, they will have that striking title that will intrigue people to click on that title. Or in the scientific publication, you need to have that title that will create that curiosity about the things that you are writing in that paper. Okay, so here the most obvious thing that you need to have in your paper, in your final project thesis, in your final project report, or in the presentation, your title should identify the area of work. It needs to be specific. Okay, it needs to be specified into the things that you are working on. You cannot give a general sense, or you cannot give a general a general or you cannot give a too general too general not format. Well, just look at this figure. Probably you will understand. If our research is about the study of humidity effect on a certain material, for example, you should not write your title as the effect of humidity on the growth of afferences, because it will give different meaning for other people, because afferences can also mean as the falls of snow on the slope of a certain hill, for example. So what afferences that we are talking about here? It is the afferences of electron in electrical gas discharge. Okay, so by adding this special thing, by adding the focus, or by adding the specific thing of our research, it will determine the title will be readable or not. Because if you are if you only put the title like in the left part here, it will give many interpretation for those who are not familiar with the work itself, because effect of humidity on the growth of afferences means the growth of water humidity in the slope of a certain hill that covered by snow, and it will create afferences. But here we are not talking about that. We're talking about electron afferences in the electrical gas discharge. So adding the specific terms into your paper is one of the essential things that you must do in order to differentiate, to make specialization of your title with someone else's. Okay, because you need to be special in terms of presenting the paper, presenting your final project report, that this is mine, that this is my creation, this is the thing that I produce after several weeks, after several months of researching, etc. and so on. So make sure that your title becomes specific. And if your advisor, for example, give you some kind of a general or broad topic, okay, in the end of the day, when you are presenting your final project in front of the examinee, you need to have a specific title, because that is the first way to interact with your examinee, and then the examinee will know you are working on some things using this method in this study or in this field, for example. So so it will give some kind of a direction also for the examinee to raise question or to discuss on what to raise questions or what to discuss into a certain way, so that he will not ask things that is outside of the scope of your writing itself. And the first phase or the first hurdle is to overcome the writing of your title. Okay, it needs to be specific. And then also a strong title separates your work from everyone else's work, because if you're writing studies on the electrodeposition of lead on copper, it is different with the effect of rhodamine B on the electrodeposition of lead on copper. It needs, so the second one is basically gave you differences between your work with everyone else's with someone else's work. Okay. Okay, but be clear. But you need also to be careful. Okay. Even though detailed titles separate the present work with others, you do not put too many words on your title. Okay, because there are limitations on writing your titles. Usually, the maximum. Okay, it is not a rule of thumb, but usually if your title is longer than 3 lines, then you need to edit somehow so that it will match perfectly with the 3 lines requirement. Okay, so often not possible to create in only 3 or 4 details. Too many details are difficult to understand, and it needs to balance precision with conciseness. Okay, so this is the thing. You need to have that experience in order to make your title specific, but it needs to be concise on the same time. Okay, so after you write your title, the next part is the introduction. The introduction is basically the place where you put your literature review result, or your literature review discussion, telling the audience about reasons why you conduct this study, telling the audience what are the things that need to be done in order to overcome some problems that exist in the society, for example. So introduction prepares audience for the discussion and make sure that your reader has enough background information to appreciate the problem you're studying. Obviously, when you are writing for a review paper, the conciseness becomes, well, it depends. If you are writing in physical review and geophysical review research, you need to put more emphasis on the conciseness of your introduction. But if the review paper is it doesn't have that page limitation, and then you can write the whole experience or the whole studies that they carry out for a certain period, then you may write the introduction a little bit longer. Okay, so but you must make sure that the background information that you put in the introduction is sufficient for readers in order to understand your paper. Okay, so you need to make sure that background information of the audience is good enough in order to appreciate the problem that you are studying. And then you need to make sure that your reader appreciates the importance of the research you are reading. Okay, so that is the introduction. You need to tell us about the topic, the importance, and the background, why you conduct that study. And also, especially for those paper or reports that doesn't have limitations or in their requirement, for example, you need also to tell the audience about the arrangement of your paper or the arrangement of your reports. So, for example, you can tell in the last paragraph or in the last section of your report that this report contains introduction that tells about the background, tells the background of this research, and then they followed by the second chapter that tells about the basic theory on this thing and that thing and this and so on, and then followed by method, etc., and so on. So if you are looking at someone else's final project report, for example, You will see at their last section of their introduction, they will have that summary. Okay, a little summary about the report itself, but it is not pinpointing to the main message or the main conclusion of the study, because it's only to kind of give some kind of an introduction or a brief information about the thing that you are going to present on that report, basically. Okay, so here, since introduction prepare audience for the discussion, you need to give them motivation. You need to describe the goals and significance of research. Why is the research is worth doing? And then it needs to contain background information, provide concisely relevant background material so that audience can appreciate the research. And then this would include previous related research, relevant theory, and unanswered questions. And you can use figures and diagram if you need to, okay? Because the production of figures is not constricted only on the basic theory and the method and result, etc. Because you can also produce a graph if it's necessary on your introduction part. And then you also need to include a preview of conclusion, briefly describe the key conclusion and result in the paper, but not spoil everything, okay? Not to spoil everything that is the result of your paper, okay? You can tell that from this study, we have a definitive relations between this parameter and that parameter, but you will not tell them about the specificity. Okay, for example, the relation is linear between that variable in and this variable, but at certain temperature. For example, you don't say that. You write them in the actual conclusion, but not on your introduction. Okay, because it need to be concise. So the bottom line is put yourself in your audience shoes, because usually the typical so what the audience or what the readers usually look at the first time when you see a paper, they will see the title. Okay, they will see the title, and then they will look at the abstract. Okay, they will look at the abstract, and then they will look at the conclusion. Okay. Oh, no, the order is wrong. So first one is the title, and then they will look at the I guess the thing that I mentioned earlier is correct. So the first is the title, the second one is the abstract, okay, and then they will see the conclusion, okay, the conclusion of your paper, and then look at the reference list, and then to the introduction. Okay, so put yourself in the audience shoes. It means that you need to have first is the compelling title, and then followed by the concise conclusions. Okay, the concise conclusions, and you need also to learn how to write an abstract later on, and you need to have a strong introduction in order to increase the curiosity of the reader more. Okay. Okay. So introduction defines the scope and limitation of the work. Remember, the same also applies for your final project report, that you need to tell us about the assumption that you made and tell us about the things that you are not doing in your research, so that the reader will not have expectation, sorry, that is so that the reader doesn't have too many expectations from your paper, and they would knew it if they read the limitation of your study itself. Okay, so so you need to tell them, you need to write in the paper that our study, our scope of study includes this, and this, and we are not telling, or we are not conducting study about A, B, and C if it's necessary to tell them. Okay, but what writers usually do is that they tell us that this paper only covers about this, and this, and then moving on to later section. Okay, so the reader will know if they're going to find something that is not including in the paper, they will not read it. Okay, so it makes some kind of a distinction that your study is already specific into a certain direction, for example. Okay, so here in the example given here, once is going to talk about the alcohol effect for some people, for example. So in this example, the title is going to be the proposed study on effect of alcohol on life expectancy. So the scope of the paper will include the 3 classes of drinkers: non-drinkers, moderate drinkers, and heavy drinkers. And then they will specify that only men surveyed for the study, and the study is already done for 10 years. Okay, so they tell the audience that it is coming out from a 10-year study of the effect of alcohol. So in this paper, they will not talk about the effect of alcohol on women, and then other effects such as exercise. Do people who are exercise and also consume alcohol have the same life expectancy? They don't regard the exercise factor as important in this paper, for example. And then the medical history of each man surveyed is also not included. Okay, whether the man itself is having some kind of a heart problem or lung problem or a pancreatic problem, etc., and so on. Okay, okay. And then for other example, okay, here is for platinum catalytic igniter in hydrogen air mixture. It tells about the importance. So introduction. So here in this example, introduction, define the scope and limitation. And then in this slide, introduction tells the audience why the research is important. So for example, this research presents a design for platinum catalytic igniter in hydrogen air mixture, because if we are not looking at this, it will create one danger at nuclear reactor is a loss of coolant accidents. And then such an accident can produce large quantities of hydrogen gas. And then in a serious accident, the evolution of hydrogen may be so rapid that is produced an explosive hydrogen air mixture in the reactor. And this mixture could breach the containment wall, the containment wall, and allow radiation to escape. Okay, so telling also the importance of our study is also need to be included in the introduction. Okay, so after we read introduction, we are moving on to the basic theory and result. Okay, basic theory and result. And usually in result, you also present your data, for example. So introduction. So basic theory and result. It's basic, and also in the sometimes in the analysis also. So basic theory, result, and analysis. Those three are basically the middle part of your report or your paper or your presentation, which is the correct way or is the correct place for us to present the work. Okay, the technicalities and details about our work is present there. But again, you do not use or you do not write too much details. Okay, you do not write too much details on these sections, because sometimes they have, again, the page limitation, and also sometimes you don't need, sometimes it is not necessary to tell us the small details or the small things on your research in the paper. Okay, so in order for you to have an effective middle part of your report, paper, and presentation, you need to choose a logical strategy. Make section and subsection, headings or chapters, and then subchapters or sub-subchapters, etc. So for example, we have headings. The first headings is the basic theory. The headings is the specific things that needs to be addressed. For example, when you are dealing with time series, sometimes you need to look up also in the frequency domain, so that the subheadings also includes the Fourier transform, etc., and so on. And then when you are when you are going to, or you are planning to make some kind of a specific details on certain theory, then you make another subheadings that is talking about that topic, in order to get clarity, or in order to get detailed information about that topic. And then the third one, and then the second heading usually is from the result. And then usually what is typically written in the result is that how you gather the data, what is the equipment, and then if you are conducting measurements in the field, you also need to include the profile of the region or the geological background, or the geological or geographical information about that site, for example. And then how the data is collected, what equipment that you use, and then the ways that you process the data, and what are the flow chart of the signal processing, step, etc., and so on. And then the last heading is usually covered the analysis of the data or the result that you gather. So common strategy for the middle part is that you can have a chronological order. Okay, chronological order means that the step-by-step procedures that you have. This is what people usually use on their report, that after they gather the data, they process or they pre-process the data, they edit something that is not, or they rename the data, etc., and so on, and then they process the data, okay, and then they reprocess the data, and then they interpret the data. So the procedure are told in the chronological order, from one step to another, from start to the beginning. Another approach is that they use spatial approach. Spatial approach means here that they have one specific topic, but they tells one place to another based on certain order. Okay, so for example, here in the spatial or in the spatial order, we look at some kind of a jet machine, okay, so that people will describe first, for example, the front fan, and then the rotor, and then the place where combustion is taking place, and then the exhaust place, for example. That is the spatial order if they choose to do this. Another one is the parallel parts, and then if you have flow charts, then you can also describe your studies in a flow charts diagram, in the flow charts order, for example. The section headings should be descriptive and parallel. So this one in the left is a non-parallel, non-descriptive. In parallel descriptive, it's become like this one. So the introduction, and then the basic theory, such as in the past design for particle beam fusion, and then the third section becomes the new design for particle beam fusion, and then you include the description of the charging Mars generator, etc., and so on, and then followed by the fourth section, which is the result of the new design, and then finalized with conclusion and recommendation. So the common headings for paper, which also common chapters for your final project report, is done in this way. So introduction, the basic theory, okay, and then the processing of the data, for example, and then result and analysis and conclusion. Okay, dividing a section into a subsection, all pieces should be also in the same pie. So for example, if you have a 10-page, so if you have a chapter, okay, you have 10 chapter that is divided into 3 sub-chapters, the amount of writings of each sub-chapter needs to be equal, okay? Try to make them equal from one sub-chapter to another. The same also applies here in the section of your paper. If you have subsection, the length of your subsection needs to be the same, okay? Because otherwise you don't need to have the subsection itself, okay? So in order for you to have that distinctive subsection, you need to maintain that the length of each subsection is the same or relatively the same, okay? Okay. And then the hierarchy of headings and subheadings, okay? You must treat it like this way, okay? Because subheading is basically the additional. It serves some kind of an additional explanation on the thing that you want to explain on the headings, basically. Okay, and then result and discussion. Okay, the result and discussion section is the final part of your main presentation or of your main paper, or usually it is become the fourth or chapter of your report. The purpose of this section is to present and discuss your findings, then to analyze your result and compare to previous result models. Important elements that you need to add in the result and discussion is that you summarize the result, you analyze the data, and then you give relevant details, but not too many details, okay? Because you don't need to add, add some minor things if it's not relevant to the if it's not relevant to the paper itself. So don't treat your paper like a lab report, okay? In lab report, on the other hand, when you are conducting experiment in the laboratory or in front of your computer, the the technicalities or the procedures that you done on your experiments, it needs to be detailed. Okay, so that when you have result from the experiment, you can differentiate that after you treat. If you have this treatment, the result is A. If you change the treatment into this, the result becomes B. And then if you change again the treatment, okay, so your third treatment is different from your second and first, so the result is C, and C is similar to A, you need to write that in a detailed fashion in your lab report. Okay, for your lab report or for your progress report or for your computational report, etc. and so on, it needs to be detailed. However, for your paper, don't use the same thing there. Okay, those small things that is written, so the things that you consider as big on your lab report, it becomes small in the paper. Okay, because in the paper you only need to summarize or to conclude after you conduct treatment A, B, and C. You can see the trend, or you can see the behavior of the things that you experimented there. Okay, so in the report, you don't put the every details that you have like those written in the lab report. Okay, because lab report is one thing, creating a paper is another thing. Okay, and then after relevant details, you need also to have detailed analysis. So the thing that needs to be detailed is your analysis, not the thing that is from the lab report. And then if it's necessary, you can also test the first hypothesis, whether the assumption that you have in the beginning is proven or not. For example, if your result agree or differ with particular hypothesis, provide an explanation of the relevant hypothesis and explain in details why you believe your result agree or disagree with these models. So bottom line is, again, put yourself in your audience shoes. Convey all the logical steps that went into the analysis of your data and into the conclusion you've drawn from that data. Okay, and then the final part of your presentation slash paper slash final project report, in a strong ending, summary of result and future perspective. Okay, in a strong ending, you need to summarize your result and give future perspective. Okay, the goal of the ending section is to re-emphasize the most significant result and conclusion associated with your research. The important elements of your ending is the summary of your writing, and then provide closure, and then make recommendation and be clear and concise. Okay. Two approaches for summary: you can be descriptive, okay, and you can also be informative. So here are the example of telling a conclusion of a certain study in navigation system. One is concise, one are a little bit longer, but the most distinctive thing here is not related to the size of the paragraph actually, but the aims of the summary itself. Because in descriptive approach, you basically explain in details. Okay. You describe you explain in a concise way, but informative, you gave information. Okay. In descriptive approach, you don't necessarily give information, but you are more tend to pinpointing to the conclusion. For example, pinpointing to the conclusion that from the variety of saturation, it will give different number of conductivity. For example, that is the descriptive way I'm doing it. And for informative way, you can make the description a little bit longer, so that when the saturation becomes when the water saturation become increasing, we can see that the electrical conductivity is also increasing. And on the other hand, if it's decreased, then the conductivity becomes decreased, etc. So okay, the other, and then the last part of your paper or presentation, sometimes it also needs to include acknowledgement, okay, or you need to thank for people who are contributing in your study. Not necessarily it needs to be directly involved, but those who are provides you some facilities, data, etc. and so on, needs to be also thanked. Okay, because failing to cite the contribution of others can be fatal flaw of your career, which are examples given here is from James Watson's work on DNA. Is not giving enough credit to Rosalind Franklin. Rosalind Franklin is a Nobel winners who in biology, if I'm not mistaken, or in chemistry. I forgot which one. Is there any Nobel Prize winner for biology? I don't. But in medicine, yeah. But in medicine, I knew there are. But what is important here is that even the famous James Watson, who studied about DNA, even though they are working together in the 50s, okay, but he did not give good credit for Rosalind Franklin's work. And then this another examples of HIV virus study, where Robert Gallo did not appreciate Luc Montagnier and Francois Bersinousi for their contribution in the HIV studies, and it's basically damaged his reputation later on. And then to conclude, choose good informative title which identify area of your work and separate from others, and then writing a good introduction is basically prepares the audience for the discussion, defines the scope or limitation of the works, and tells audience why your research is important. For the middle or the body of presentation or body of paper or body of report, you need to choose a logical strategy, whether it's chronological order or a spatial order. Make a section and subsection that is basically provides information of your study and provide explanation on the result and analysis that it have from your study. And then the ending of your paper / presentation / report will give summary of result and closure of the discussion, and sending future perspective or giving a suggestion for readers in order to improve the study later on, so that the result that you have in the current paper will be proven again from other studies or disproven from other studies. And then you need to remember to, and then you need to be careful about referring and citing other people who also have contribution on your study or in your research. Okay, so those are basically the steps on how to, it's a brief explanation on steps that you need to do in order to produce a good paper, presentation, and report. But in the end, your experience in dealings with that becomes the focal point. Okay, and then the feedbacks that your advisor gave, you need also to pay attention to them, because your advisor is basically people who have more experience than you in terms of writing scientific manuscript, like paper presentation and also report. Okay, so from here, is there any question from the students who are present here in the classroom? Is there any question from students? Okay, so in Thursday, as I mentioned probably in the last lecture, I want to know topics that you already think about for scientific communication presentation and paper. Okay, so here I'm going to stop my lecture because I guess for the continuation, because I think the videos that I provided in the EduMax, you can access it at any time that you want. But the thing that you need to do right now, or in this week, you need to have already have one topic that you want to discuss in this class. Okay, because I think this week is the PRS week. So for those of you who going to reconsider to abort this class, okay, or for those of you who wants to involve in the class later on, because this week is basically the week for you to do the PRS. Because after this, we're going to be more involved in the topics that we're going to present or to write. So, please think carefully about the topic that you're going to choose for this class. For those of you who already have specific topic that is taken from your final project, please make sure that the topic, or please make sure that the thing that you want to cover in the class is not all related to the research itself, but more on the general information or the general background of the study, or the general or the current situation, or the current development of your research, for example. So for example, if you are going to work on the application of seismic method in foundation investigation, then you can choose to look for the same topic from one paper, for example, and then you present them in the class with some additional information that you learn from your literature review. But which is, so basically it is related to your final project research, but it's not directly, but it's not the same. Okay, it is not the same with your final project research, because it is not using the data that you collect. It is not using the data that you're going to analyze for your final project, but it is coming out from a certain paper that you took a lot from them, that you study a lot from, that you take a lot from them for your literature review of your final project. Okay, and then for those of you who doesn't have topic yet, please think about it. Okay, you can choose the application of physics in daily life, or you can choose the thing that fascinates you. For example, the application of artificial intelligence in electrical car, for example, or the application of artificial intelligence in predicting the stock prices, for example, or how the 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 newest version of camera now using the latest technology in terms of the lenses, in terms of the LCD, in terms of the memory, etc., and so on. So please choose wisely on the thing that you are going to cover in the presentation and also in the paper of scientific communication class. Okay, is there any question from the audience? Okay, if not, then in Thursday, I will ask everybody one by one about their chosen topic, while we are also still continuing with the how to write our paper in term, but later on, we're going to talk about how we design our figures, graph, etc., and so on. Okay, so with this, I'm going to conclude our class. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording.